This is the worst part, like waiting for the intro. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Colecast. This is episode 39. We are no longer...
I thought we were at 40 last week.
This is episode 41. We are no longer doing seasons. This will be a continuous and ongoing, and if we take a break, we will just pick back up where we left off from. So, welcome back to episode 41. This week has been very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Nice.
I don't want to say progressive for some reason. We've made a lot of progress this week. That's how I'll phrase it. We've made a lot of progress. So, this week we have not finalized, I'm still not putting a date to this, but we have built 2 KAs that will be available for purchase once we make them available. And we have rebuilt our first refurbish. So one of the things that we have found out about KA customers is they love their KA75s and they are willing to invest in them to get them rebuilt or maintenanced. And if it's something that they are not comfortable doing at their house, they often find other people to do it. Well, who is a better person to do that than the people who have the drawings and make the parts? So we will not only be offering new KAs for sale, but we will be offering refurbished KAs, and we will also be offering K75 maintenance and rebuilds. So we don't know exactly how that'll look. It'll probably be just like if you take your car to the mechanic. It's going to be time and materials. But we're fleshing that out. But this week has been very, very good because Greg and I have been able to build a K75, refurbish a K75, and then also finish your build that Nathan started. So that's what we've been working on since we talked to you guys last is we were jumping off the cliff finally on the KA project, and it has been very, very fruitful this week. If I wish I didn't wash my hands as good. I had to wash my hands like 10 times yesterday. So the new Chalk Fast that we found is not orange when you pour it like the old stuff. It's blood red. And when we went to seal the bottom of the cylinder with the what's that tubing called? The temporary gasket is essentially what it is. The temporary gasket, it didn't seal right because there's no flat spot for it to land. It just keeps rolling over, which we'll talk about that. You haven't even learned about that yet. But so I'm holding it in place, and Greg starts pouring, and just my hands, I look like a field medic from a World War II movie. And as we're like cleaning it up, I mean, it transfers to the cloth like blood does.
Yeah.
And so... Greg took a bunch of it and walked by Logan and was like, "Hey, do we have any Band-Aids?" So that's a fun thing that we learned. But it set very well. When we poured it, it pours so much more even. We just got the mixture better, but it pours so much more evenly. Just a lot better to work with than the Chalk Fast was. So I'm really excited about this Loctite brand that we're using on those now. Testing on those. Way to go, Evan. Now I can't think of what we were talking about.
Better start over.
Yeah. All right, guys. So anyway, we were working on KAs this week, and no, I'm just kidding. So the new Loctite is working. We're using that in place of the Chalk Fast brand. Both because finding it is really hard, and then once you find it, it might be something that sat on the shelf for 5 or 6 years. There just wasn't good consistency with sourcing it, so we've moved on to that. We were able to figure a couple things out as far as SOPs and steps, like when do I weld the foot pedal on? When do I do this? So there's a few things that actually will take place after painting, which this will be the first thing that we assemble after paint. So like running the hoses and installing mufflers and mufflers.
Yeah, there's mufflers.
I don't know why I thought mufflers was wrong there for a second. Mufflers and stuff like that, all that just looks so much cleaner if they're not painted.
Sure.
And so those will all be assembled after paint. So that's been a fun kind of...
I mean, that's how we do the presses too. It's just we have a company that manufactures the cylinders for us. They paint them. then we install them, and
Yeah.
we scratch the surface and paint them again. So
Right.
it makes sense with us making every single part.
Right. So that's been fun to kind of challenge ourselves on that. We also did find out that we had to move induction forges because there's just too much going on next to next to induction forges, and we were building them, and they were just covered in all kinds of grinding dust, and we're grinding the cylinders down to such a fine level that it's powder, and
Right.
so it's hard to clean off. So we moved that, not a big problem, and that's kind of what we've been working on in the shop this week. Nathan, what's been going on in your home shop?
I'm still fighting with the gas company. So that's where I'm at in my home shop right now. I can't. So I have an induction forge at my home shop that I can use.
Well, fill
but-
us in on why you're fighting with the gas company,
So-
because people might not know.
Yeah, it was 8:30 p.m. on a Friday night, and I was tucking my youngest in, and my wife ran into our bedroom and said, "I think your shop's on fire." And I popped out of bed so fast that my pants fell down, and I ran outside.
This is also like the first time you're in bed before 2 a.m. in the past 6 months
And
since Isla was born.
So I was running outside with my pants around my ankles. My wife thought it was the funniest thing she'd ever seen. I get outside. There's a massive plume of flame flicking up the back of my shop wall. So I run out. My shop is immediately next to my big propane tank, that 500-gallon propane tank. And so when I get back there, I can see that the wall is gone, but it's not like on fire. The regulator that metered the gas into my shop had exploded, and it was on fire. And so the fire was blowing out of where the regulator was, and the wall was just kind of like singed, right? I mean,
It's not a high heat fire.
well, the propane was a high heat fire. So I turned the gas off and then proceeded to, dismantle my wall in an attempt to ascertain how far, because the fire had blown up the wall, burned the wall away, and then was blowing gas up into the wall cavity. So it was burning the wall from the inside out.
Okay.
So all of the framing structure, all that stuff is gone. It had only been burning for a little bit. We caught it super fast. My wife was able to get a hose hooked up. I tore out the wall, watered everything, blah, blah, blah. I still had a bunch of axes to finish. And so I had to come into the shop here to do the last run forging. I was still able to grind in my home shop, but I'm currently fighting with the gas company because their regulator failed, and I didn't do anything wrong. So it looks like, as of right now, we've had a third-party inspector out multiple times. They did a complete 3D scan of the building to see, because they can then basically use a program to deconstruct the fire and see where it originated and stuff. And so they're doing that, and they're just arguing with me about timeline. And so I can't do anything. I have caution tape all around my shop. I can't use anything.
What are they trying to say that you're lying about timeline?
It's not. It's not that. They're saying you cannot rebuild, you cannot clean up, you cannot touch any of
timeline.
this.
Okay.
And it's been weeks. And so the whole end wall of my shop is gone.
Yeah.
And there's just debris everywhere.
I think it's pronounced debris.
And I'm just like, can you guys give me a timeline? Can you tell me what's going on? Can you?
Gotcha.
No, we can't. They took all of the propane stuff and took it to a lab, and now
What is that going to tell them?
well,
That
they're
it
trying to
is
figure
propane?
out. They're trying to figure out if it was a regulator failure, but the regulator was open like a flower. It looked like a clicker from The Last of Us. And the fire was coming from the stamen of the flower. I mean, it's pretty, it's that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah.
So anyway, And I've got a couple projects that I'm working on for a company in Japan, and it's been a super pain in the butt because I cannot do anything.
Because you can't do the project.
So I've been trying to use the induction forge, but like, for example, I have a 25 kilowatt. One of the pieces I'm supposed to be forging is a 7-pound billet, and a 25 kilowatt can't. I've tried a bunch of different coils to see, because I can break the forging up into sections. It's still just too big.
Yeah, I mean, the induction forge, fantastic machine. I know a couple guys that make them, and they're great people. But
If you
they
had,
don't replace everything.
If you had a customer call you and say, I need to punch an eye in a 7-pound billet, you would say,
no,
don't use an induction forge.
You know, and we do get customers, and same thing with like Damascus.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you can make your billet inch by inch.
Well,
or,
I mean, the 25
2-inch.
kilowatt 15.2 that Brett's been using for his melts, I mean, he's doing 2-pound billets.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting way to go about that. Like, you know, it's not forge welding. It's like, you know, you're actually making steel from raw material. But yeah, I mean, as far as like forging, the big constraint with the induction is if you're forging something super heavy, you know, if I need to forge sledges, I can heat treat sledge faces.
Right.
But once I need to heat the central mass of the billet for the punching operation, it just doesn't do it. So yeah, that's been super, super, super frustrating. So I took the first 2 days of this week and all weekend. We are remodeling our kitchen, and my wife reminded me that I told her it would take a month, and it's been a month.
Yeah.
And I'm almost done with demo.
Yep.
So here we are. So that's what I've been doing. So our house is very old. And so everything is super complicated.
And it's been redone
multiple
12
times. Yeah. Yeah.
Finding other people's personalities.
Well, yeah. I mean, like
in
in
their
one
build.
section, I tore down a flight of stairs. It was a secondary flight of stairs. It was in the middle of the house, and it's just super awkward. It was super narrow, and the stairs are cocked at an angle.
Yeah, the first step was 1.5 feet high.
It was 22 inches.
Yeah.
And it was in a doorway. And so we tore that out. But while I was tearing it out, I opened up the wall to find a 10 by 8 timber jammed into the wall cavity, and no bricks with any mortar. They just packed a bunch of bricks around that with no mortar. And so, yeah, there's been a lot of stuff like that. It's been super cool because, like, in one section, we pulled out what I thought was just like a built-in shelf, and it was actually like a very old oak cabinet that they had built a cavity in the wall, pushed it into the cavity, and then trimmed it out.
Oh,
but
the pantry?
Yeah, the backside of the pantry, that oak cabinet in the dining room was a super old cabinet. Unfortunately, they attached it into the framework of the building with like 5-inch, 16 diameter nails.
Yeah.
So it had to come out in pieces. But like once we pulled that out, then we found
That's
9
a load-bearing shelf.
Yeah, it was. We found 9 different layers of wallpaper. So that was super cool. So you could see like the generational, and some of the oldest stuff is this beautiful like rose pattern, and I don't know, it's super cool. It's really fun to explore in a building that old. But yeah, that's what's going on right now. Bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you about the kitchen anyway. So, what's been the most fun part of the kitchen rebuild? Has it been the design process? Has it been the actual work? You mentioned on the last podcast that work is your favorite hobby, that you do work in your free time. Has it been the work that's been the fun part, or?
I'll say this week was probably, I finally got a sense of like I finished something. So one of the biggest issues was in our kitchen we had, it was an 8-foot ceiling, which is pretty low for a house that has primarily 10 or above ceilings. And so it had a drop ceiling. I hated that because I knew that the ceiling above it was in terrible disrepair. So I tore out the drop ceiling. So getting everything opened up was really cool. You came and helped rip down the ceiling, and that, you know, that was a lot of work. I did not enjoy that part. But so the ceiling rafters, the roof rafters of the actual like roof are scabbed together 2x4s, 1x3s. I mean, it's just an amalgamation. So what I did was I brought in rim joists that I attached to the brick and then put in new framing members underneath the existing, because I didn't want to tear out because I would have to redo the roof. So I just brought a framework under, and that gave me the depth that I need to get to full insulation value. But that project specifically was like, I didn't know if what I thought was what I didn't know what to do. And so I kind of like, okay, well, I'll put the rim joist in, I'll put the framework underneath. I know that these are on erratic centers, like those, the rafters are supposed to be on 16 or 24 inch centers.
Right.
They're on 22, 29, 34, 21, 9.
Yeah.
You know, so the next stage of insulating that, because I retained the existing structure, I had to put the members at that same spacing. So the insulating process is going to be super annoying.
Are you going to keep the little creepy door
Where's their creepy door?
up in the top corner that takes you in from the attic, from the back room? It's got a little light bulb. Was there not a door, or is it just the light bulb?
It's just a light bulb.
Okay.
There's just a light bulb.
As soon as I
There's
started-
a light bulb like 19 feet in the air.
Yeah. As soon as I starid like thinking about it, I was
there's no
I was
door.
like, I can't see the door in my head.
So
Just a light bulb.
I mean, I like being able to work. It's been very challenging because I have 5 kids and we don't have a kitchen. I don't have a sink. I don't have a dishwasher. We don't have a stove. So we've been cooking on a little griddle in the dining room. So you like cook the food and put it on paper plates, and then everybody eats around the super hot griddle, and it's super sketchy. I've done a lot of remodels. The dust when you're working in a house this old is like nothing else.
Insane.
It's black and it's on everything. I mean, I have it,
Well, and there's
it's
15
everywhere.
different kinds of insulation.
oh my gosh.
And they're all mixing?
Well, and then there's like cat bodies
Yep.
in the old insulation. We found a cat. Kids were super pumped. They have the skull hung up.
Oh, you found a full one.
Full,
Okay.
100%
'Cause we
cat.
found the like raccoon.
That was a cat. It was a cat.
It was?
We found the rest of it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I found the head shortly after, and Millie was super pumped. So that's hung up. We have a
Kids are creepy.
homeschool room with like dissected stuff and plants.
Kids are
and,
terrifying.
So
Part of that.
I have a lot of. I feel really good because I've got good structure in now where there was none. I've got making progress has felt really good, because when you have a project that you don't know how to fix, and then what you think will work does work, that's nice.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. So I have a lot of work left. My wife keeps asking me when it's going to be done. My last kitchen remodel took 3 years. So, I mean,
Genuinely took 3 years.
genuinely.
Like, that is not an overstatement. That is, it might have been longer than 3 years.
It was roughly 3 years and
Yeah.
and 3 refrigerators,
Yeah.
two that didn't work.
One very heavy
Don't
refrigerator.
buy commercial refrigerators from Facebook Marketplace.
Yep.
That's what I learned.
Especially if they show up delivered laying down, which is a bad sign.
Mine wasn't laying down. It just didn't work. We had to lay it down to get it in the door.
Yeah, we did.
Because it was tall. It was taller than the door. It was a big refrigerator.
It was large.
And I tried to get it in by myself, and my neighbor came over and helped me, and then you helped me get it the rest of the way, and then we plugged it in, and it didn't work. Mm-hmm. And so then we
Spent a lot of money trying to figure out how to
threw
get
it
to work.
outside. Yeah, we had a company come to repair it, and he was like, "Yeah, I can't fix that."
Yeah.
It's like,
Wasn't it
So-
something that like it was like one small part that they just nobody made?
it
anymore or
needed a new
something?
compressor, and the model of compressor wasn't cross matched or something, and they couldn't so they couldn't use another brand of compressor. Seth Wright, that owns Firm Root Farm, told me I could have just pulled the whole system off and put on an air conditioner, but could have.
You could have. You probably could have done a lot of things. That one sounds a little
just
wild.
knock a hole in the wall with an air conditioner
Yeah.
and put the refrigerator in front of it with a little cutout in the back. That actually would have worked. So
Sounds
anyway,
like a nightmare for your electric bill.
well, so yeah, so it feels good to make progress on a project that you don't know how to fix, right? And I've got one more. When I took out the staircase, they had cut all of the floor joists to put the staircase in. That's okay. Well, the framework of the staircase is supporting that section that they cut, and I need to get it out. So I put in timbers to carry the second floor load, only to realize that the floor in that one spot where they put the staircase and cut all the framing apart has sunk 4 inches. And so now my framing has to either push that second floor back up into position, or I'm just going to have a big exposed timber because it sits below the drywall.
That timber being exposed, it wouldn't be the end of the world.
Well, the problem is it's crooked because it's 4 inches lower on one end.
yeah, I
So
get
it looks
that, but
freaking weird.
Yeah, but the timber itself looks cool.
I can make it
it's
look
old.
cool, but it's like, I don't know. Well, this section isn't old. This is one new like girder I built. Yeah. So we'd have to frame it out to make it look old,
Yeah.
which whatever.
My parents have that in their house, so they've got a great room on. They've got like a half an A kind of in their house, and their support beams have like oak boxes built around them.
Yeah, that's
that
pretty
looks
normal.
Super cool.
And we've got some old barn beams out. So the barn on the property is like hand hewn, axed timbers, mortise and tenon together. So, and I've got some extras that I could like skim cut the surface and then box around, but it's like, so I have a lot of work left.
So after the kitchen gets done, what's the next? What's the move? What's the next thing to remodel? We're doing the upstairs bathroom because it's weird.
So the upstairs bathroom has a big room with a tub in it. They count that as its own bathroom. So on our listing when we bought the house, it's 2.5 bath because there's a bathtub in a random room. And when we bought the house, the woman that we bought the house from said she bought the house because there was a tub in that room.
And it's like right next to a window.
It's in a window. So when you lay in the tub, you can look out over the back
It's very
pasture.
peaceful, I would assume.
Oh, it's super
I've never
peaceful.
actually bathed in
The
it.
tub is long enough that you can sit your butt in it and put your feet up. So that's unfortunate. People were smaller in the 1800s.
Yeah, they were very much smaller.
Very, very much. So I don't know what the next project is. So we're going to finish the kitchen, the dining room. I decided to remodel the kids' playroom. So I took out the glass door. I moved the washer and dryer. So we're going to redo the washer and dryer room. I'm putting in a vintage sink that I bought at the auction. But I found out that it uses a non-standard trap. So you have to buy a cast iron P-trap from the manufacturer.
This explains a
And
lot.
it's $290.
So you have a profile on Google that is info@coleiron.com. And you also have your other email addresses. But occasionally you will open the info profile and you will Google things. And so I'll get on and I'll either try to Google something and it will come up as, well, you just asked about this last night. Sorry, you're
Yeah.
asking about this again. But probably about 2 weeks ago, I got on and I had like 5 emails from Cora, and it was all about sink traps.
Oh.
And I was like, who is asking Cora about sink traps?
I've never asked her anything, but I'll pop on there. I was just trying to find this part, and I figured it out. Suck.
So
But,
the kids' room is next.
Kinda. That's not going to be a big deal.
It's a
I just have to kind of like trim in. So weirdly enough, that floor in the kids' room that goes out into the mudroom also goes under the kitchen.
That makes sense.
So
Actually, it doesn't,
floor
now
of the crawl space under the kitchen is a pad that extends over, and then they just built on top of.
Yeah, that's weird.
So it's 12 inches tall, so you can't get in the crawl space. Ollie could.
Yeah.
I can't.
Ollie
I'm
would
thick.
get in and then not ever come out. He would just live.
live in
under,
there.
under the kitchen floor.
So I don't know. Lots of fun stuff. But yeah, I was working on, we're putting in there was a cool, like half Dutch door, I think it's called. You called it a nanny door.
Nursery door.
Nursery door. That was on.
Nanny door would make sense too, though.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cute colloquial thing to call something.
It was in the house when we bought it. We took it out. We're putting that back in so that we can have, in the kitchen, you can go out a little stair. We're going to build a little deck. You're going to go out into the garden. Mm-hmm. So we have a vegetable garden out there that's mostly fruit, but you can get your stuff and come in. It's going to be super sick.
That's sweet. That's we were just talking about that with my house. I want to put those double doors in. That's exactly why.
Yeah.
Is I don't want to I want to have like herbs and carrots and like just stuff that you cook with regularly.
Yeah, dude.
And I want to be able to just walk out,
You
pull
want
it
to be a
out.
trad wife.
Yeah, kind of. I have to be my own, you know. Yeah. But that was when I looked at the house when I was buying it. It looked like it had good access to the yard.
Yeah.
That is. So I have like the land, and then I have the yard that is very clearly this is where we live and this is where we do stuff, and then we just have the back acreage.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be able to get to the yard from the kitchen dining room area, and it looked like you could do that from the pictures, but you can't. So I want to put in a double door back there so that I can do the same thing. But I want to do raised beds because I'm getting old, and I don't want to bend over.
You're also freakishly tall.
Yeah, bending over takes me longer than
Than a normal man.
it takes normal people. Yeah. So, well, cool. Let's move on to our segment of who won the contest. And then after that, we will have...
Was it me?
No. After that, we will have a couple questions that were either customer generated or I have one topic that I kind of want to cover. But Evan, will you pull up the post that won?
Oh yeah, give
Is
me
there
a
going to
sec.
be cats?
No.
I don't want
He
any more
specifically
cats,
said
Evan.
he was market testing the cats, and we don't have the results in. So
Yeah.
this week
Waiting on the cats.
Yeah, we don't.
Can we get a little mustache brush on that I can like clear it out of the way?
like a boot brush, but tiny.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, I'll get to work on
Get
that.
it outta
We could have Corbin CAD that out for us this week.
He is a genius.
Corbin Cad.
Catted by Corbin.
Catted by Corbin. We should make him business cards.
Sounds like a design firm.
Catted by Corbin.
Catted by Corbin.
What's his last name?
Gadinger.
Oh,
We should probably bleep that, so nobody
he's a minor.
looks him up. Yeah.
Oh, I totally posted his first and last name.
Oh, okay. Social
It's
security
on,
number.
it's on Instagram. It's
Evan's fault.
Notice that product placement there. If anybody?
very casual.
Should we run down the list? Red Bull, Monster, John Deere, Allison Chalmers, Cummins.
I don't think Alice Chalmers exists anymore.
Somebody's got to own the name, though.
Does anyone? Maybe Agco. I think Agco
Maybe.
owns Alice.
Anyway, we will accept sponsorships in return for free stuff. You don't even have to pay us.
And
We just want free stuff.
we are thinking about doing, because we're trying to engage our local community.
Yes.
I think it's time that we have a polling tractor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
So if anyone has suggestions on what kind of polling tractor, I'm all ears. I think Greg said we should do a 4020 John Deere.
Yep. 40/20,
With a
baby.
P pump from a 24 valve Cummins.
I'm not smart enough to know what that means, but 40/20 for sure.
So
They're cute.
I think that's what he said.
They're stubby. Those are the ones that look like they kind of like rear-ended something and got slammed together, right? Those
No.
are stubby.
I don't think so.
No?
No.
What was it one more time?
What?
What was the tractor called?
John Deere
John Deere
4020.
40/20.
I wanted
You're
to
supposed
do
to be looking up an Instagram post.
I wanted
working
to
on it.
do an Oliver with a International DT 466 in it, mechanical, tuned up. But he said no. Greg told me no.
Yeah, Greg thinks he's going to have to work on it. That's
But he is going to
1420?
4020.
40/20.
I didn't even know a 1420 existed. That's a
that's a
garden-
lawnmower.
That's a garden
yeah,
tractor.
yeah, that's a
I was
garden
very
tractor.
confused.
Sure.
Here we
Yeah,
go.
it's just
Oh,
like
yeah,
a
they're
John
not
Deere,
stubby.
dude. No.
I like that canopy over the cab though.
Yeah, it'd be nice when you're out on the pulling.
Also, if
pulling
anybody
yards.
has like a Dixie for sale, I now have a lot of acreage, and I have a riding lawnmower that's going to take me like 4 hours to mow my lawn with. So,
I don't even own a running mower at this point.
well, you got enough kids to eat the grass. They're like
They're
goats.
bad at it. They're real bad at it.
All right, let's see if I.
All right, so the winner of the first hammer in your shop was
Did you do the other one?
I almost said
Oh.
Greg. This is Jeffrey Dodderman, who we've had on the podcast before. I'm excited for him to win the first contest. Because just hearing him say anything makes you excited about what he's talking
He
about.
is such a ball of energy.
Yeah.
He makes me feel so simultaneously self-conscious and at peace.
Yeah. That's
It's
the
like,
perfect way to put it.
How are you so positive and energetic all the time?
Literally always.
Always.
I'm excited for that. Also, he deserves all of the recognition
Yes.
for everything that he does for Warriors Way. Same with Dave. The only reason I say that Jeff deserves it is because Dave doesn't like the spotlight and actively gets uncomfortable when you
Just pointed at
commend
Jeff.
him. And he turns the spotlight to Jeff. So, Dave, we love you. But also, we love Jeff. And I'm really excited for Jeff to win this. I will get your address, Jeff, because you come and pick everything up that you buy. So I don't know your actual address. And I will get you this shirt delivered. And we're going to do it in teal because you seem like a teal guy. Even though it is
What
the hardest color for me to tell.
What's the mug? When's the mug giveaway? Is
The
that
mug
next
giveaway
week?
will be next week. Yes.
Yes. So that episode
That's-
came out this morning.
That's on this morning's episode.
Got
That mug is
it.
super cool. Pull that mug up again. Let's tease it.
Teasing the mug.
It's a little
Tease it.
Adventure Timey.
It is.
That was.
We
the-
should change the Adventure Time. Can we turn it to the Adventure Time sword? What sword did we
that was
use?
the inspiration.
This is one of Andy's swords.
Oh, that's special.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we do an Adventure
That's
Time
literally
edition?
the reason every time something is like that, where it's like, hey, well, why don't we do it like this other way or this other,
Just
like, way
shut
cooler
it
way?
down.
Shut
Well,
it.
it's Andy.
Well, it's Andy's.
So-
It's Andy's. That was my first thing when I got into production, and we were redoing the 12-ton area. And I was like, hey, we need to pull this shelf out. It's way too long. There's no reason to work with a shelf that is 8 foot deep. You were like, well, Andy built that. And I was like, all right, so the shelf stays. It is here forever. And then when we went to go take it down, I was like, dude, this is so annoying. I think there was 3 different kinds of screws in it. There was like a Torx, and I was
I'm sure there
complaining
was.
about it. And you were like, well, that's what Andy had on hand. And I was like, it's a great shelf.
It's the greatest shelf
The greatest shelf there ever was.
was.
So yeah, that's it. Around Coal Iron Works. If something is bothering anybody, the way to shut it down is like, that was Andy's.
Yeah.
Too bad.
Too bad.
So Jeff, we will get you that shirt mailed out, delivered. Once again, we print on demand, so that is not coming from our shop. You cannot come and get it, and I cannot deliver it to you next week when I will be at Warriors Way. This will come out before that. Yeah. So this weekend, as you're listening to this weekend, if you're in the Midwest, go check out the Warriors Way Expo. They have really, really big news to announce. And it's really
Am I supposed to
cool.
have their signs done?
Their signs need to be done by Thursday of next week.
Okay. No problem.
Yep. So I'll be going out Thursday to help them set up a couple of buildings. And then Friday, we're doing a friends and family night, I guess, kind of thing. And then Saturday, there's an open house for everybody to come and see what they're doing. And they've got activities going on. I will be out there with some materials, some handles. A33 is always a big one. And then I will have Charlie and Greg with me, who then will guide you through a forging experience with the very cheap material that you just bought. So if you've never made a hammer, you've never made a drift, even if you're an active blacksmith and you just want to learn a different technique, this isn't just for new guys. You can come buy the material, and then these 2 guys will show you how to do what you want to do. That's what we did last time. I assume that's what we're doing this time. That went over really well. So shout out Jeff. But moving on, we've got some not user generated. That's not, some customer generated questions here, and this one was a pretty good one. Let me pull it up here.
You're gonna love what I've got next. It's not a cat video. I just typed it. Yeah.
I'm now scared. Oh, cool. So you've got it pulled up. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, Colecast, I've been working with secondhand tools and hand forging everything in a small garage shop. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about efficiency and longevity. How do you maximize the lifespan of old or secondhand tools without sacrificing performance? Nathan, you want to go first?
Well, I just had a great experience with this because my grinder exploded. I use a lot of cheap old secondhand tools. Sometimes it's because there's nothing else on the market. Sometimes it's because it's just so cheap.
Right.
So my big 10 by 90 grinder, which is a Hammond 1000D. D stands for dry. They have a wet version too. Using it, the motor detonated. And it had a tag on it from the last manufacturer that said, what did it say? Like, use until destruction.
Yeah.
Something like that. Like a formally made metal tag to signify that this was to be used until it didn't work anymore. Well, that's what I did. And the way that it's set up, there's no way, like I have to deconstruct the entire machine to replace the motor. Mm-hmm. And it has me thinking about this question kind of because one of the things that I've found is, and this is true of presses, this is true of, new equipment, old equipment. It's an idea that we're using actively as we're designing and improving our product line, which is maintenance and repairability.
Right.
So for years, on our 5 horsepower machines, you had a vertically mounted motor that was very difficult to access the electronic or the wiring box on the side of the motor, which was a pain. And if somebody had a problem and we needed them to check a voltage or check your wiring, there wasn't a good way to do it. No. And so we moved to a model now where the power pack is a self-contained unit in the base of the machine that you can slide out. And if we need to replace something, we can just slide that out, ship it back to us. We ship you a fresh one or whatever.
It's 2 hoses. It's so simple.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you have a plug for the switch.
Yep.
It's like we're constantly thinking of that for those. But when I'm taking in old machinery, I'm starting to think about, okay, what modifications can I make to this to make it easy to work on? So the Hammond grinder is a great example. It has a cast iron base, and the entire belt tensioning mechanism and the motor and the wiring is all contained within the cast iron base. Mm-hmm. And so my plan is to cut the cast iron base off, build a quick fabbed up version of the same thing where the motor is readily accessible. And so you can make little modifications to old machinery like that you can then leverage to keep them running. Access to the motor and pump, access to the whatever is going to wear out. Everything breaks, everything wears out. It's just a part of using machinery.
Right.
And so making it as easy to replace as possible. On all my old bandsaws in the shop that I have in my personal shop, I will, a lot of them do not have the original tags. And so I'll take the time to go look up all the information and I'll write the part numbers for replacement parts right on the machine. I use a white paint marker. I got the part numbers for the belts, the part numbers for the motor, if they have one. I put the bandsaw blade sizes right on there and ones that I consistently like or use. If I buy one and try one that I don't like, I don't write it down, or I'll write it down and say no.
Yeah.
I just keep all that information right on the machine. On the machine. And that way, when it's time to do something to it, when I need to replace something, I've got all the information right there. And that wears off over time. Maybe you could use letter stamps and stamp it in. Just get that information available because, like the welder, we have a old welder that we just had refurbished that went into the KA cell, and I needed to rewire it. And I opened the wiring cabinet, and there's no wiring diagram. So I went online, I found the manual, I printed out the wiring diagram, I laminated it, and I put it back into the machine because I've rewired that wire for 480 to 208 9 times at this point. And every time I have to go find the manual, which we don't have. So I've got to Google it and find the right one. And so, just think about stuff like that and take the extra 5 minutes to give yourself a solution the next time you have to open that up. I think that's a good idea. Spare parts, nice to have on hand. If I decommission,
if you know what you're going to go through, because a lot of times you'll go to people's shops and it's like they have so much clutter and junk, and it's because they're that's a spare part for this or that's a spare part, and it's like your bearing shouldn't go out in your motor enough to have 4 on the shelf for them.
I would say one of the things like I bought an old dust collector and the motor went out on it, and I had a motor that I was able to just pull it apart, pop a fresh motor in, go back to work. If you're going to look at used motors, I would suggest finding base and face mount motors. That's what we use on our presses. And what that does is it allows you to use it on a face mount or a base mount configuration. And that answers a ton of problems. The 2 and 5 horsepower motors that we sell for the presses are very affordable and they're very reliable. And so I had one that we had scavenged a bunch of parts from. I was still able to use it for that application. It's missing some safety stuff, but it doesn't have a terminal box, doesn't have a fan shroud. But for my application, no problem. Doesn't matter. I was able to throw it in there and use it for that project. So,
and building a fan shroud if we needed one wouldn't be the end of the world.
The other thing is we use paddle switches on our presses with magnets on the back. And I will usually replace the stock little switch with one of those because I can put it wherever I want it. And it's you cut the wire, you splice in the wire, or you wire it at the motor terminal box, whatever. But now I've got a mobile magnet switch that's a safety switch that I can put wherever is accessible. Those are some good things that I've noticed over the years that I've done that I felt like helped me keep old equipment up and running.
Pull that question back up real quick. Let me make sure I understand it before I give my answer here. Because you went off on a little bit differently than I expected. How do you maximize the lifespan of old or secondhand tools without sacrificing performance? Got it. I did not have the answer to that question. So I'm going to answer the question that I thought it was, which is essentially how do you buy secondhand tools without sacrificing performance and outcome?
Oh, sure.
You don't. That's essentially, now, good tools cost good money because they're made by good hands. I'm not saying that you can't go to a local hardware store and find a good deal on something. I'm not saying that you can't go to Quad State and find a good deal on an anvil. I'm saying if you're buying a Weaver motor, you expect the outcome of a Weaver motor compared to a Balder. Right? Or I really like WEGs. But if you're buying kind of used generic stuff, the reason that you should be doing that is to get comfortable with that style of equipment and run it until demolition. Go buy whatever knockoff angle grinder they have and let it explode,
Preferably not in your hands.
But I mean the motor, not the cutoff wheel. The first time I ever used an angle grinder that happened. I would not wish that on anyone. But the reason that you're buying secondhand, the reason that you're buying things like of that nature is A, to either figure out how to get comfortable with it, or B, because even secondhand, it's already better than what you have. I have a bunch of stuff that is from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s that it might be third or fourth hand by the time it gets to me. But the reason that I'm going to use it is because it's still better than what I'm getting off Amazon.
Yeah, sure.
So, that's kind of my answer to that. And then the answer to the actual question is everybody gets very concerned with productivity and getting into their shop, and they have 4 or 5 hours to get this project done. And, you know, especially if you're working in a position where you're selling what you're making, it's like, okay, if I work 5 hours on this hammer, I can afford to sell it for 150. If it takes 10 hours, I have to sell it for 200 or 250 or whatever. And they kind of look at things by project instead of their overall volume, and they forget how important it is, like you said, regular maintenance. If you have a bandsaw and you know you're running it low on coolant for the past 3 months, don't be shocked when it doesn't perform the way that it should.
Sure.
If you're running an old wood blade and trying to cut steel, you're going to get bad performance, right?
Yeah.
So I think that just taking the time to regular maintenance, but B, set it up for the process. Don't go over and run it real quick just to get this one thing done and then be shocked when you ruin a wood blade because you were cutting metal on it. I think those are two of the biggest things that stick out to me when I am in other people's shops, and even in our shop, and the way we take care of it is that we don't set aside time for regular maintenance the way we should, and something breaks. Now, since Charlie's gotten here, it's gotten a million times better, and I haven't had to fix very much of anything. And B, using things outside of their application just because it works in a pinch, you're going to ruin the machine. So that would be my answer to that, and how to keep secondhand and kind of other items, even new items, keep their longevity without sacrificing performance.
I think one of the things that you kind of posed a secondary question, which is how do you buy them? Like, and one of the things that I have learned over the years is I will see a shiny deal and buy something without a use.
Hold on.
Shut up.
Is this real?
And so I have recognized that and tried to be a lot more poignant with my purchases, because more often than not, the shiny deal ends up going to the scrapyard, and it's frustrating because then what you do is you're like, well, I bought it, so now I have to use it.
You try
whether
to find an
or not
application.
it's the right tool for the job or whatever, right? And so you're trying to extract productivity from something that that's not why you bought it. You bought it because it was cheap. You know, or like I bought that old hacksaw. I bought it because I wanted a cool old hacksaw.
Yeah.
I just thought it was cool, right? And it's like, well, I never found a use for it. Well, right, because I bought it because I thought it was cool, not because I had a use for it.
Right.
Now, sometimes you can, you know, we found a interesting design in that hacksaw specifically that has helped kind of identify some opportunities with, they did a reverse cylinder mounting and they ran the ports through the rod. Really interesting, right? Like I learned something because of that. Yeah, that's, you know.
Is it worth it?
It wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Or the drama of moving a 3,000 pound hacksaw 8 times before I realized, okay, it's time. Yeah. And so, you know, like when I bought the 10x90 grinder, I had an exact application.
Right.
And I went looking for tools to fit the application.
Right.
And I found 9. And then it was like, okay, which one's going to be the fastest plug and play? So that's the thing too. I have bought a lot of tools, and I have a, what is it? A Parma roll-in saw sitting out there that I bought because it was cheap, and I had an application, but it will not do what I needed it to because I bought it so cheap.
Yeah.
And so now I have to put a bunch of time and energy into reworking the guide system and the rollers, and it's like, you know, a few weeks later, I was at an auction and found in like production condition roll-in saw. And I bought that for my personal shop, and I've put it in my personal shop, and I use it every day. And I didn't have to mess with it at all.
Right.
It had, and I knew I wouldn't, because that's the other thing. When you're at an auction, look for the tools that have replacement parts with them. They've got a catalog from the manufacturer. Like it had everything. It had the original purchase receipt. It had all the history of maintenance on it. It's like, that made that tool worth an extra $500 to me, because I knew it came with backup parts, spare parts that are hard to find or expensive, I mean, all that stuff.
I like when we buy machines that have, you were just talking about it, have handwritten notes on it.
For sure.
That tells me that machine was run and somebody cared enough to remind it. Like we have that big bandsaw that says oil every Monday.
Relied on.
Yes.
You know, there's a difference between somebody having a spare bandsaw in the back corner of the shop and it being the main tool for a production shop. You know, I could tell this machine was lovingly cared for because they needed it to work.
Well, and you can tell, okay, you can't tell. I can tell if you bought a machine with the intention or if you bought a machine when it was cool.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you how I can tell. Because when it gets here and I call and I say, hey, Nathan, I just got a new walk-in saw delivered. Where do you want it? Roll-in saw delivered. And you say, I don't know. You bought it because it was cheap. If I call you and I say, hey, this new roll-in saw just got here.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, awesome. Can you put that back in FlexFab or can you drop that off at Logan?
Yeah.
You already have a plan for it.
Right. And I need to get it in place.
Every single time I call you and I say, hey, this just got here. Where do you want it?
This junk just got here.
I don't know. That was subconscious. But every time I call you and I'm like, hey, this just got here. And you say, oh, I don't know. Just kind of like hold off on it.
The other thing that I'll do, and you can learn from my mistakes, is I watched this incredible video from, I'm going to say his name wrong probably, Jesse Cipolla. And he's like Scandinavian, from Norway, Norwegian, I don't know. And he posted this video like 15 years ago at this point. I don't even think it was on YouTube. It was on, what's the other, Vimeo or whatever? Like the other YouTube.
Oh, it was supposed to have like better streaming quality or whatever.
But anyway, he was using jackhammers and riveting guns to forge faces in plate steel. And it was like nothing I had ever seen in my life. So what did I do? I went and bought a bunch of jackhammers.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I want to do this. Well, those jackhammers have been sitting in a drawer for 5 years.
I use them once a year.
And I bought them because I was like, I want to try that. I think I would be good at that. I think I could do something really cool with that process, but I have no application and I have no time.
Yeah.
And so now I've got money expensed and tools sitting.
Yeah.
And now I've got to store them and I have to make sure that I don't lose some important part. You know, I walked out the other day and one of the, whatever they're called, recoilers, the springs off was sitting in the floor because everything had gotten moved. And I was like, if I lose that, I will never find one. Because, of course, I went and bought old jackhammers or rivet guns. And so...
With no name on them.
With no name. You know, it's one of those things where it's like, what I should do is... And I have dozens of projects like that. I want to do that at some point. I've got an oil burner in the back that this guy on YouTube makes oil burners. I think he's from New Zealand or Australia or something, and he has designed this atomizing oil burner that uses oil and air and has a gas input for preheat, and it uses I forget what it is, it's like a carbide nozzle. Like, this dude has really thought out this burner, and I've played with oil burners for years. Obviously, I always have extra oil laying around, so it's like, this is a good application. It's been sitting there for 5 years, and it's like, at some point I want to design an oil forge that's efficient and actually usable instead of what I've done in the past, etc. Right. I get the cart before the horse, and I feel a sense of satisfaction, gratification from making progress on the project by getting the things I need in place. Yeah. These drawers behind me are full of those projects.
Yeah.
I have parts for that I have no time, and it's not valuable enough for me to dedicate time to, because I've got valuable projects in place right now that I need to do, and
that are like dependent. Like, they need
time and attention.
It's not just like, oh, I got to pick this one. It's like, these are the ones that are actually paying bills.
Right.
They're not the fun ones or the things that I could monetize at some
so
point.
Then I get all of this tooling and equipment, and now I have to manage this tooling and equipment, and all these resources have been expended. I know the value of this stuff, right? And so it's like, Evan, is it okay if I sit up? Do you need to? Is that okay? So now I have to manage stuff.
Which you hate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to manage stuff.
Anything.
So my time, your time, nothing. So, it's just one of those things, like, learn from that mistake that I've made for years. And, I have...
Especially if you have a small shop. Nothing
Absolutely.
is more frustrating than going into somebody's shop and then like, oh, like I need help with this, or you want to come over and forge.
Then you can't even stand there.
You can't stand. The first caramel shop that you worked out of, and I would come over.
Yeah.
There were times that the way it was set up was like I would be next to the forge. I'd have to pull something out. I couldn't swing a hammer because like I was against the wall.
Well,
And
a
so
lot of those tools were bought because it was like cheap.
Yeah.
It was a good opportunity. No. My favorite picture, there's a picture on anvilfire.com of a guy. I don't know who it is. He has a forge, like a nice stainless body forge with a hood, and like I think it's a Nazel 3B or 4B. I mean, it's a big hammer in a completely clean white room. There's literally nothing. And it's like he has exactly what he needs and nothing else.
Right.
Is one pair of tongs because he forges one thing. And that's not maybe realistic, but it's, you know, when you're learning in lean, it's like get rid of the clutter, declutter, get rid of the things that you think are important that you've never used. Just stop it. Just get rid of it. Right. And so, you know, we've spent years at this point doing that to the shop.
No, we've not spent. We are spending.
We are spending years.
We are
cleaning
making progress,
house,
yes.
and you know, even especially when you're in production, there are things that just accumulate.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like I don't have the part I need, or I needed a part, so I cut two.
Yeah.
And now that is sitting there waiting on me to use it. Right.
Or I don't do that this way anymore. So now
Right.
these 5 tools are defunct.
Right.
But they're still on my tool board. But guess what? I
Right.
also have the new 5 tools that go there.
Right.
And so your tool board ends up being 3 times the size it is.
Absolutely.
And if you're Greg, it ends up being everywhere.
on every horizontal,
horizontal
surface. Yeah.
All right. Let's. I think we've kind of ridden that pony. Let's
Where's my next pony,
read the
Evan?
second question here. What's a common mistake beginner smiths make when working with imperfect or worn down
I think we kind of
equipment?
covered that
We
a little
just
bit
covered that.
because it's
Yeah.
like I think the common mistakes are buying worn down equipment because it's cheap.
Yep.
And it's not even usable.
Right.
And thinking you're going to have time to fix it. Good golly, Miss Molly.
But getting so going back to the initial point, yes, buying worn down material because it's cheap, you're wrong. Don't do that.
unless you have a specific use, and here's the key point. Can you identify that is going to be a plug and play solution for you? When I bought that big Hammond grinder, I looked at it and I said, okay, here's the 3 things that could be wrong with it. It doesn't look like they're. One of the grinders I looked at was cheaper, but it was a non-standard belt size.
Yeah.
So I didn't buy it because I was going to have to buy $60 custom belts. Well, guess what? The belt grinder I did buy is also non-standard, but I didn't know that because it didn't say that anywhere other than when you opened inside it and it had the original belt size scribbled out and a new belt size. I don't know why that would have happened.
It's rough.
But can you identify that you can actually put it to use, that it's actually going to be usable?
Yes. And you know, you're buying worn out equipment. There's a difference between secondhand and worn out, right? Don't buy worn out material.
Don't buy equipment missing parts.
Yes. Unless, and this is the one exception, if you are rebuilding machines and reselling them, completely ignore what we just said. Because there is a market for, oh, my grandpa had this Marvel saw for 15 years, or I've had this saw from my grandpa for 15 years, never used it.
Yeah.
I inherited it. It didn't work. Haven't had the time. I'm going to sell it.
Right.
They'll sell those saws for super cheap. If you buy one of those, fix it, and then immediately flip it.
Yeah, but
Or
is
try to
that?
flip
But
it?
that's the thing. Is that your job? Is that what you're
That's
trying
what
to
I'm
do?
saying. Yes. If that is
You know?
if that's what you're trying to do, but
But you
don't
and
buy
it's-
worn out material.
And you have to have an entire
machine.
shop set up to rebuild those parts, and you have to have the time and material and know-how. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, could you figure out how to fix that? Is not the question to ask.
Right.
The question needs to be, can I get this up and running quickly? And for me, I have enough knowledge to rewire a switch. The Hammond Grinder's switch was unwired, and I knew that when I bought it. But that's, again, I can take a magnet switch, wire it in, no problem. But if it's missing an idler wheel from a cast iron frame, pneumatically tensioned belt system,
yeah.
buddy, just there's
There's other
other
grinders.
there's other
Yeah.
grinders.
All right, so let's do question number 3. I feel like we're running super long.
Really long.
But
Are we long?
if you could go back to your first shop setup, we still haven't even gotten to the main discussion. If you could go back to your first shop setup, what's one thing you would do differently to save time, money, or frustration?
My first shop was an 8x8 shed. And my biggest frustration is that I ran the entire shop from one 15 amp extension cord plugged into my parents' kitchen.
Yep. You also had that set up into 2 rooms.
That was later. I did an
Yeah.
addition. That shop was perfect. It was the perfect shop for a small one-man tool maker. Yeah. If I had the knowledge to wire it. But I didn't know how. And I didn't even know how to learn at that point because there was no YouTube. There was, there was
We were
iForgeIron.com.
16 when YouTube came out.
So it's one of those things where if I had it, and I'm kind of doing it over now because my shop's pretty small. It's not that small. But if I was going to set up my 8x8 shed with a wood stove and a coal forge, dude, it would have been dream shop for me now even if it was wired. Electricity and availability is everything.
Yeah.
Deal with it. If you have to hire I almost said an exterminator, an electrician, fine. If you can train yourself or learn or have someone come over and teach you, like Ron and I helped Nigel get his shop wired. It solves so many problems. If you're working out of a carport, but you have good electricity.
Right. This goes back to what we said last week, which, my advice to people was really own your own electricity.
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to that.
I get why it's hard. I totally get why it's hard. Because when I didn't know what I was doing, it was very scary. And I had a guy, Vic, came out and was like, hey, you need this. You need a breaker, and then you wire that, and then you have 220. And I was like, okay.
That can't be how that works.
And then I did it then, and then I learned a little bit. But I would, if you're really scared about wiring your own shop, go find a friend that, meet somebody that knows something, ask around. If you can have an electrician come out and just talk you through it, you may feel a lot more comfortable.
Well, and I think one of the biggest benefits to the community is the community itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that people kind of overlook, where it's like, we talk about, say, Steve King, we talk about Jeff, we talk about all these guys that we hang out with kind of in the blacksmithing community. And the reason we hang out with them is because we can ask them questions.
Oh, of course.
And they have good answers. The reason that Corbin goes to Kurt's isn't because, Kurt feeds him, which he does sometimes, I'm sure, but he goes because he can learn, he can gain knowledge from him. And Kurt spends time with Corbin because somebody finally wants the knowledge that he has.
And is going to do something with it.
So when you have somebody in your community, in your blacksmithing guild and, whatever, that says, hey man, if you have any questions, give me a holler.
Yeah.
Freaking take advantage of that. That might be the answer to this question. If you could go back and look at your first shop, I was going to say, don't share it with people. Because the first 2 shops that I worked out of mainly was Vic's and your shop in Carmel.
Yeah.
And
all of the downfall of both of them were too many people. Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't just be me and you was like manageable in Carmel.
Sure.
Me, you, and Bender, or me, you, and Joe.
Noah or Joe.
Noah. If there was one extra person, it was like, okay, somebody's gonna die. Not from danger, but because get away from me, But that's, I was gonna say don't share it, but I would say maybe it goes back to that. I would take advantage of what people had offered as far as knowledge goes, and hey man, if you ever have any questions, or it's like, buy a 6-pack of your favorite brand of root beer and call a buddy over and say, hey, you want to just come look at my shop and we'll talk about maybe some advice. Invite people into your domicile to gain their knowledge.
In exact opposition to your original point.
I mean, it's still your shop, and they're not going to set up camp there. I'm saying don't share a permanent shop with people where there are 4 people working on one forge.
Yeah, it gets super clunky.
Even Vic's, there was 3 forges in there?
There was 2 coal forges and a gas forge.
Yeah. Even that got too crowded with 4 people in there.
Yeah. When I moved to Cicero, I opened my shop space to a local maker, and he came in to work on a project that was too big for his personal shop. And it was not a good situation. And I didn't know him, and I was trying to be neighborly, but also like I was charging him to use the space. And it oh my gosh, it was so bad. It was so bad. And I'm so sorry, guy. He got his project done. I helped him load it up. I did a little bit of work on the project, but he really wanted me to be a part of the project. And I literally had to tell him, I don't think I was upfront enough with you when you moved your project here. I cannot help you with this.
Yeah.
Because by the time he was getting there, I had already been in the shop for 14 hours. And it's like, I have a family.
Yeah.
Oh, can't you just help with this? And it's like, literally no.
Yeah.
And it's just really messy. Don't do messy.
Yeah.
Don't bring other people in like that.
Have people come over and share your forge with them for an afternoon.
Sure. And, it's like, I don't mind the cohabitation, but it's like, if you're going to do that, be very excruciatingly clear.
Yeah.
It's like, I will be in here from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and I will not be here a minute longer. If you are in here and need something, it's either between 6 and 6 or like it is unfair for you to expect me to be here by 6:01. Don't come at 5:59 and be like, hey, can I ask you a question? No. No. Like, be clear with that up front, and maybe it would be less. Maybe, but I just don't want to deal with that.
But I think not sharing your shop is probably the right answer. There is like, you look at like Rob. Rob's got that big old pole barn that he has his shop set up in. He could have 4 other humans in there physically, comfortably with their own shop setup. But does he do it? No, because it's a nightmare. And even with people that I like, people that I enjoy, having my stuff living with their stuff, because then you get the like, oh man, where's that punch? And then you walk over and it's in Nathan's stuff. And then Nathan, why'd you use my punch? Oh, I've had that punch since I was 15. I can tell you. And even little stuff like that, it's like, I don't care if you use my punch. Put it back where it came from. And also, all of our punches look the same. So why are you coming over and grabbing we have the same. So that's where that kind of gets to me is the like, I don't have a ton of like, this is my area and I have to take care of it. And that's my hammer. And that's my, I don't care about that. I care about the respect coming back. That's like, I understand that I'm allowed to use your things, but I will return it in the quality that I found it to the place I found it. And even if it's like, hey man, I was using your center punch and I flattened it out a little bit. Thanks for letting me know. You're welcome to use it anytime.
Once again, what you're talking about is anytime you have that situation arise where you have multiple people working out of one shop, which obviously we have a lot of people working out of a big shop.
Yeah.
Communication becomes such a focal point, and it's challenging. It's at least for me, because it's like, I don't want to explain myself. So when I go and work in my home shop, nobody touches anything except my kids. And I can deal with that, but it's like,
you got sticky fingers.
Oh yeah. I walked out to my forging hammers, my main forging hammer, which is not a cheap hammer, sitting on a table in the mud, it was raining. And I was just like, no.
Yeah. So that's what I would change about my first shop is I wouldn't have set up shop with you.
I'm what is past tense breaking up with you?
I don't know. I have broken up with you.
Yeah.
I've
know. Emotionally broken up with you.
I think
historical sense.
You and I are probably I won't say I would say that you are probably one of the few people, if not the only person, that I could maintain a shop with now. But I don't think it's because of.
It's still conflict arises.
Well, no. What I'm saying is I don't think that either one of us are like, oh, well, Nathan's better about this, and I know that he's this way or that way. I think it's just because we've known each other so long that
Sure.
even when you make me mad, I'm like, not cool. And you're like, oh, my bad. And it goes back to that communication thing. You know, there was a thing that happened on the floor a couple weeks ago. And the moment you walked in, I said, hey, buddy, don't do that. That was incredibly frustrating. And you were like, oh, okay, cool. And that was it. That was over. That was, and then, you know, that was the end of the discussion. Like,
Yeah.
So I think that because you and I have that communication,
Yeah, but how many people are you going to have that with?
you,
Right.
that's it.
Right.
And maybe someday Evan.
No. Probably
No,
not.
Evan doesn't want it. All right. So that I think that kind of answers that question.
9 hours.
9 hours later. So here we are. We're going to get into the main discussion here. I want to kind of take a look back at, we did the history of coal. We did a 2-part series actually, because people liked it so much. We dove a little bit deeper in the second one, but what I want to cover today, just we'll say not very quickly, but you know, kind of quickly, is
34 minutes.
is number one. I've got 2 questions. Number one, looking back, what would you do 1,000 times out of 1,000 if you had to start cold over again? What is the one singular best decision you made?
Whoa. Start. I always give that answer.
So
You can't get anywhere unless you start.
So
if I
lame.
hadn't started, we wouldn't be here.
It's such good advice, but I hate it.
But if you know, it's like and Logan made mention of this the other day. Like Logan and I are opposite. Logan needs every
every detail.
mapped out. And you know, dude, like that has made our lives so much easier when it comes to launching a product, getting a concise deliverable packaged. But it's like, I didn't know how to make presses. We started. I didn't know what the best mechanism to do it was. I didn't know how to ship them. I didn't know how to build them right. I didn't know how to, you know, and it's like, you just have to work your way there. When we started Cole, I say this all the time, we had no idea we were going to build presses. That was not the point. But we started and the opportunity arose and we took the opportunity and it, you know, it's like, and it's like with my personal work, I feel it's just like, you know, we talked about just focusing on capability and competency as you kind of flesh out what the rest of the details are going to be. You know, it's like, 1,000 out of 1,000, I would start. There's a lot of other things we could talk about, but I think that's the real one.
I hate that, and I wanted you to say hire Francis. That's
Well, I tried,
really
Francis.
where I wanted that
I
to
tried.
be. I know. But you got Peyton out of it, and Peyton was a really good worker.
Peyton was fine. I have a lot of guilt over the other unmentionable person we hired, just because I hired somebody that I did not have the skills to manage.
Correct.
But
And they didn't have they didn't have the skills to be employed. We're being brutally
well, and
honest.
that's happened several times where it's like I will hire somebody before I have the competency to manage that level of person.
Right.
You know, I'm not a manager. That's not my skill set.
Nope.
You know, I'm a people person.
Yep.
And I can sit and have a really long conversation with you.
Really deep and emotional conversations
Sure.
are your forte.
Yeah.
Which makes it hard to be a manager because you get
Right.
way too emotionally tied to,
Everyone.
oh, well, you know, now I feel this way because I know what they're going through in this area and I can't, I
well,
can't
and then
reprimand them for that.
people tend to bring me their feelings.
Exactly. So being a manager, sometimes you have to be black and white. This is
Well, which means you have to have a proper procedure in place before you even begin.
exactly, which is something that I'm navigating right now.
And I don't know how you
And
start a business with proper procedures in place. That just doesn't
don't.
happen.
You
You
don't.
can't do that. Like there is a gaping, sucking chest wound between starting a small business and a corporation expanding into new territory. Not the same thing.
If your first employee that you hire is not somebody that you can trust, there is a problem. The whole
Yeah,
reason you
sure.
have to have that policy
Right.
and that proper
Is to
procedure
fill in the question
is to
marks.
fill in the question
Yeah.
marks because you don't have that level of trust.
Yeah.
When you're starting a small business, I do think it's like, okay, I'm going to go after people I know.
Yeah, I mean, we've been the most successful in that territory.
Yeah.
I didn't know Logan. I didn't know Evan.
Well, those are very good examples of why not.
But I think it's you just get started. It'll develop over time. And if it doesn't and it all falls apart and, you end up in prison for doing it wrong,
Yeah.
that, hopefully that doesn't happen.
There are worse places to be in prison than America. There's better. There's way better. But there's also way worse.
Next question.
Next question. Not what would you necessarily not do? So a lot of times when you say, what would you change about starting? Not like, oh, well, I would not have moved into this building or whatever. What was a good decision that you made, but looking back with the experience that you have now, you would make again with slight modifications? So an example, this is a terrible example, but when I was growing up, we would buy the frozen mac and cheese Marie Callender meals, okay? And I always cooked them for 2 minutes, and they were always a little cold but edible. Looking back, I would still eat the mac and cheese, but I'd cook it for 3 minutes. Okay, that would be my example of what I'm looking for here.
Yeah.
Shut up, Evan. You're the producer, all right? You're not on this podcast. Children are to be seen, not heard.
I think I don't know. My gut level answer would have to do with, Andy and I being partners coming into the business. I think it caused a lot of turmoil. I don't know if it was our personalities or if it was the way that we started things and we didn't have a good idea of who was responsible for what.
Yeah.
And that caused a tremendous amount of conflict and turmoil and tumult. So it's like, I can't say that I wouldn't have started the business with Andy, but I think if I had the knowledge that I know now, I don't think I wouldn't start something with someone else. Mm-hmm. It was so hard communicating and navigating,
especially with Andy,
right? Yeah. And navigating those situations with another person. Mm-hmm. It's hard enough when you're in a small business starting things and you're responsible for everything all the time. But then when you also have a partner that you're responsible for communicating what you're responsible for to the other person, it's like, it's a whole nother layer of hard. Now,
and I remember there being a little bit of conflict over like, Andy would know a couple guys and he'd get a couple jobs. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, we're going to do this. And then you would know a couple guys and get a couple jobs and be like, hey, we're going to do this. And it got to a point where there was like, well, I want to do this job. Well, I think we should do this job. And it's like, and that
even gets to, you get work in. Does Andy get more from the job financially because he found it?
Yeah.
And if he consistently finds more jobs, does that mean that he always gets more?
Or is that just his role?
Exactly. Is that part of his responsibility? And then yes, some of those things will naturally kind of work themselves out, but it's like, it's so much additional demands that I think if I was going to start Coal-Over, I can't say that I would start Coal-Over without a partner, without Andy, because
Andy, this wouldn't have happened.
I couldn't have.
Yeah.
That wasn't even an option.
You would have made Indianapolis Tool Company.
Well, or I wouldn't have done anything.
Yeah.
Right. So I needed the spur of someone else coming alongside, and then, his financial backing at times, or his knowledge backing at times, or et cetera. Mm-hmm. It's like, I couldn't have done it without Andy. But if I was going to start something again, I would leverage what I've learned, and I wouldn't have a partner. But you have to take the opportunity that's presented. If you have an opportunity to start something with someone, just know it's going to, like, one of the biggest challenges is going to be the relationship between you guys.
Right. But that's also kind of sometimes one of the bigger rewards too. You know? I know that you and Andy got very close through the process.
Well, and you're with somebody every day. I mean, he was my wife, right? Like, and our wives would both joke that we were just as married as we were to them.
Yeah.
Because, you're just, life is so intimate at that point when your finances are in front of each other, your decision-making is in front, and everything's at question. And it's just like, it's being
like finances
married.
are rough this month, but you just pulled up in a brand new Hyundai Elantra. All right, bud? Like, let's talk about the decisions you're making while we can't pay the water bill.
Right.
That never happened. I don't want people to think that
there is
Andy
no
bought a Hyundai Elantra.
No, it was a used Pontiac Vibe.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's actually a very, very good answer.
That was a fast answer.
Yeah, that was a good answer. So that kind of wraps us up. We will be going to Warriors Way. If you are hearing this
What are
on
the dates?
Wednesday, dude, God bless it. Today is the 19th.
Stop asking questions.
Evan's getting spicy.
Yeah.
So on the 29th, go to Warriors Way on March 29th of 2025. Go to Warriors Way in Lima, Ohio. You can Google the address.
Lima.
Okay.
Lima, Ohio.
Got it. All right. And then this weekend, you guys, this is past the date, and I will have a follow-up next week about this, but I'll be going to a school that has purchased some stuff from us and doing a little bit of hanging out with the youths. And then CBA. We have one more question. Stop fading us out. And then CBA
We have
in
another
April.
question?
Yep. And then I think Quad States are next up after that, right? We don't have any other shows. We're not doing the summer shows this year.
Correct.
Yeah.
No Maker Camp, no Blade Show.
No Maker Camp, no Blade Show.
Blacksmith Gathering.
And it's not for any other reason other than, guys, we're tired.
Well, more precisely, we need everybody's attention on the projects we're trying to bring to the finish line.
We are spread too thin. This trip to California is our big one for the year because we've concentrated our shows.
You just wanted to go back to California for your birthday.
I was in California for my birthday last year.
I know you were.
And I
wanna
was
go back.
elected again this year. I literally said they want us to come back. Evan, do you want to go? Can we send somebody else? And you guys all said, no, Francis, you've already made the connections. You go.
You're a giant people person. You fit in with the Redwoods.
So I will be in California. And then after California, the next one up will be Quad State. The reason we go to Quad State, we consider that somewhat of a hometown show. There's a lot of emotional connection to SOFA.
It's an hour away, and we sold our first presser.
It's an hour away. So get active. Do that with us. Also check out coolschool.com for classes and IBA meetings, which are free.
Specifically minis.
Minis.
Quick little 1 hour classes. You can pop in 2 hour classes depending on how complicated. Charlie's heading this up, and he's doing some of the coolest stuff. He's doing all of those things that I bought tooling to do the projects that I've never had time to do. He
Also,
took them and did them.
Schedule 2 back to back. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're going to travel, if you're coming from like St. Louis,
Make a
schedule
pan
couple.
and a utensil set.
Exactly. Like you
What's
don't have
up?
to just schedule one. You know, that's the one
And
of
bring
the
a
things
pal.
somebody was talking to me on
your
Instagram
son.
about was like
Bring your daughter. Bring
they
your
were
loved
like,
one.
well, I'm from St. Louis. I'm not going to drive up there for an hour-long class. And I was like, cool, book out the whole day. You know,
Sure. Come hang with Charles.
make a hammer
Charles.
and a pan, and yeah, exactly. Charlie's the man. So check those things out. Our final question, which is what I want customers to respond with as well. Tag us on Instagram with your responses and stories and posts. What is the most unexpected lesson that you have learned from forging and metalwork? What is the most unexpected
That's
lesson?
a bad question.
Well, way to hurt Evan's feelings.
That's not a good question. That's way too general.
What's the most
The
unexpected?
most unexpected question.
The most unexpected lesson. Did I say question?
That die grinder swarf ends up in your toes. What? Always. It ends up in your toes. Wear an overshirt if you're going to die grind, because if it doesn't end up in your toes, it ends up in your underpants. And my camera just died because it's so hot because we went so long. That I don't have a better one. If you're going to get into big metal work, you're going to learn how to concrete.
Actually, that was my answer. So my answer was you will be amazed at how many of the trades are cross compatible.
Oh, yeah.
If you know something in concrete, it's not going to be the exact same, but it's probably roughly the same.
Well, Adam Savage has a comment about that. He basically says like welding is the same as using a glue gun, which is the same as using a sewing machine.
Right. Or a soldering iron. Or,
Yeah, exactly. Like it's
all just scale and material. That's
and I'll say this. After being in the trades for this many years, my eyes have been opened to how everything is made forever. And it's mind-boggling.
How incompetent adults are.
How
when you're a kid and it's like this adult, like
how
adults are the big thing.
shoestring and
Yes.
bubblegummed our entire society is, the hopes and dreams of a nation are resting on the very poor quality weld holding up the supports we're all standing on.
Yes, that is a great.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you're a kid and it's like, oh, well, adults all have their lives together, and now you're an
Right.
adult, and it's like, I know 3 people that have their lives together. 3.
And I'm going to dinner with them weekly to understand because this is a real event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good one. I think that's honestly that what I was going to say was the crossover, but the how adults are incompetent is probably a better lesson. All right, guys, thank you for spending time with us on your drive to work
This
or
fine
taking your dog
March
out,
afternoon, morning.
maybe drinking coffee, thinking about it. But all right, guys, I appreciate your time. We'll talk to you next week. Why was that kiss so loud? Like right
I'm a loud kisser.
I don't want to know.